All right, welcome back. So if you do have a question, that's how you can send us a question. And on today's show, I'm very pleased. I do have a guest, Maria Maccecchini, the CEO of Annovis Bio, is joining me today. Maria is in the pharmaceutical industry, and she founded Annovis in May of 2008 to develop better therapeutics for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other neurodegenerative diseases. She's been a partner and director of two angel groups, Robin Hood Ventures and Mid Atlantic Angel Group, founder and CEO of Symphony Pharmaceuticals. Annovis is a biotech company that sold in 2001 to Transgenomic. Just has a wealth of experience in this field. We're happy to have her on the show. Maria, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dan, and thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think everybody out there, I mean, including myself, has some family member or has a friend that's been touched by Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. It seems to be kind of in the limelight these days. And I know your firm works to bring to market drugs that'll combat these diseases. Tell us a little bit more about your company.
So just to say something about what you just said about our friends and family, it is a devastating disease. And between Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and other neurodegenerative diseases, 50% of us will have one of them by the time we are 90. Unfortunately, there isn't really much we can do. If we age, our brain is going to age also. And there really isn't much on the market today to fight the disease. We have a drug that's Aricept. It's an old drug. It has been out there for years. It's actually generic, and it improves cognition a tiny little bit. In the last 2 years, the industry or the FDA has approved two other drugs. In fact, one of them was just recommended for approval on Monday. That is Leqembi and donanemab. These drugs do not improve cognition, but what they do, they slow the course of the disease. So maybe by combining one with the other, we can get a little relief. So yes, I was on Money Matters a year ago, and that I said that we were in 2 phase 3 studies, one for Alzheimer's, one for Parkinson's. Sorry. What that means is that we were treating over 350 patients in Alzheimer's disease, and we were treating over 450 patients in Parkinson's disease. The FDA wants you to do really large studies, 2 large studies in each indication. So this would have been my first large in Alzheimer's and my first large in Parkinson's. We just released the Alzheimer data a few weeks ago. So the study is done. We analyzed the data, and we found that while the drug does not work in everybody we gave it to, it does work in early Alzheimer patients. So Alzheimer patients that are still reasonably self-sufficient improve by 30% on our drug. Now, Parkinson's, we finished the study, but we do not have the data yet. We will have the data in 2 weeks. And I hope that because it's the same drug, we'll also have a 30% improvement.
That'd be great. I mean, 30%. And again, with a study that large, that's good stuff. Now it's kind of interesting because we deal with retirees and we've seen people come into our office and you can kind of tell they're early Alzheimer's. We had one client in particular, the husband and the wife both, just early 70s, and both are in a facility right now for Alzheimer's. So I think the work that you're doing is absolutely fantastic. So what's the next step? So if you find that it's effective, how's the continued development of these drugs go?
So the FDA usually or routinely wants you to do 2 studies so that you can show that the first study wasn't a fluke. So we are just now summarizing our Alzheimer data, making a package for the FDA, sending it to the FDA and asking for a meeting. We expect that meeting to be in September. And at that meeting, we want to explain to them how we want to move forward. As I said, this drug short term, in a 3-month study, improves cognition. But I also told you that the novel drugs, while not improving cognition, they slow the development. In order to see if a drug does slow the development, you have to give it for a long time. Short term, you don't see the development. 3 or 6 months is too short. So what we want to tell the FDA is that, A, we want to reproduce the short-term effect so that we can say short-term it improves cognition. But we also want to do a long 18-month study to see if it also does slow the cognitive impairment. If it can slow the course of the disease while also improving cognition, that would be a really, really good end effect. So that's for Alzheimer's. For Parkinson's, we kind of want to do the same thing. As soon as we have the data, if it looks similar to the data we found in Alzheimer's, we'll summarize it, we'll send it to the FDA, we'll ask for a meeting, and then we will propose the same thing. We will propose to the FDA to do a 6-month study to repeat the symptomatic short-term activity and do an 18-month study to show that it changes the course of the disease.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting point. So when you talk about developing drugs for these types of things, I mean, what are we talking about here? From the time you develop a drug to the time it hits the marketplace, I mean, this could be like decades, right? I mean,
Yes, it is.
it's not a short experiment here, you know?
No, it really is. I started this company in 2009. Okay, actually incorporated in 2008, but the company started in 2009, and I'm still at it. You know, it's beautiful to see that your drugs actually make it to the market, and it's beautiful to see that they work in humans. Except that the road from invention to testing it in test tube, to testing it in mice, in dogs, in rats, to doing the safety, to see if it interferes with liver, if it interferes with kidney, if it interferes with your heart, if it interferes with your eyes. I mean, a drug could make you blind, right? You have to check for that. And then finally see that it does work in Alzheimer's, and hopefully in 2 weeks it works in Parkinson's. It's 15 years, and I give it another 3.
You know, it's funny you bring that up. I laugh when I'm watching TV with my wife. You'll have a drug come on, and it's treat selling. It'll tell you, it'll spend 5 seconds on, hey, you see somebody dancing or something. It's going to help you with your arthritis, and then the other 55 seconds of the ad are all the things that could happen to you that are bad. You know, oh, this could cause death, and it could cause this, and it could cause that. And my wife told me that even if it happens to like one person, they have to put that out there that it's possible.
Yes.
Which is
It's correct. Well, you know, I was talking to a chemist, and he was saying that the regulations in the chemical industry and the pharmaceutical industry are so tough. But if you look at illegal drug trafficking, these people are exposed to fentanyl all the time.
Right.
And they are not the drug users. We are talking to people that ship the stuff, the people that make the stuff, the people that send it to us illegally. They are all contaminated.
Yeah.
And you know, nobody controls them. No, of course, they make it illegally, but still, they're going to have long-term side effects.
Yeah. So again, going back to if you start a drug company, let's say in 2008, 2009, here we are in 2024. You know, so we're 15 years, and I'm assuming the company has had no revenue because there's no drug on the marketplace yet. So how much do you raise? I mean, where do you get your funding from to bring these drugs to marketplace?
So as long as I was working with animals, we got a lot of grants from the government. And we got 7 million from the government and 7 million from private investors. That was not enough to do clinical trials. So we went public, and we have raised 90 million since then. And that was enough to do smallish clinical trials, even though 350, 450 doesn't sound that small. But the next studies will be 700 patients each. Yes, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, that sure is. And so you get through the next round of studies, and then, I mean, how many rounds of studies do you have to go through before they will approve a drug for treatment?
We just believe two more, another Alzheimer's and another Parkinson's.
Okay, so one more study, and if they deem it to be effective and safe, then they allow you to go to market.
Yeah.
And then how much funding how much more money do you need to do the additional studies, and then how much more money to market the product and get it on the shelf?
Well, I'm not sure I'm that ambitious, but anyhow, we need about another 200, $250 million, because the studies we did that were 30, 35 million had 350 and 450 patients. We need studies with 600 and 700 patients. So those are bigger studies. We'll also do a lot more checking. We will check for brain volume. We will check for brain antibodies. We'll check for brain plaques. So we'll do more checking than in the short studies we did. So we think 250 million. And I don't know what I'm going to do with my life when I get really old, but I kind of don't see myself running a fully integrated pharmaceutical company because we are small. If you think Alzheimer's and Parkinson's together is 7.5 million people just in the United States, how is a tiny company going to staff up to serve that many patients? I can invent things. I can develop things. I think pharma is going to do a much bigger and better job than me in terms of marketing and selling. Plus, that they can have the small script at the bottom saying everything it does.
Yeah. So there's tons of pharmaceutical companies out there. There's got to be some type of competition or other drugs that other companies are trying to bring to the marketplace. How many other drugs do you think there are that are out there today?
Out there today, really only two.
Only two.
Competition has been tough because when people get stuck on plaque, and I'm sure you have heard that Alzheimer's is plaque. You have these blobs in your brain, and these blobs kind of are in your brain. And since 1906, people thought that these blobs are the reason for Alzheimer's. And slowly, people are changing their mind, like me, and we say, no. The blobs are the outcome of Alzheimer's. First, you get Alzheimer's, then you get the blobs. So most development is still trying to remove plaque. And as long as they're trying to remove plaque, the drugs they're developing are not bad, but they're not that good. And right now, there are only two on the market. So there are a number of smallish companies just like us, and they're trying different approaches. Interestingly enough, all of us have very, very different approaches. We don't copy what each one does. Absolutely not. We all come from different areas, say, no, this is the way, this is the way. And I think that's very encouraging, because if we attack the brain from a number of different sides, we have a much better chance of figuring out what's going on.
Yeah. So I know I've read in the past about Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and they'll tell you that if you eat certain foods, it reduces your risk and this and that. So the disease themselves, is it genetic? Is it something from the environment? What would you say is really the cause?
There may be 7,000 different causes, but let me tell you, with the ones that are sure, about 1% of Alzheimer patients have a genetic predisposition. They get it 100% of the time. Okay. And then maybe another 20, 30% have a predisposition that gives them a very, very, very high chance of getting it. That's the ApoE4 carriers. They have a 90% chance if they are if they got the gene from the mother and the father. If they got the gene from just one of the two parents, then they get it 50% of the time. And then there is the rest of us. I have my genes checked. I'm not ApoE4. We get it 20-30% of the time. So the 1% and the 20% that have a gene or two genes, yeah, that's pretty clear. But what causes Alzheimer's? If you had a car accident, you hit your head. If you were playing football, you hit your head. If you were exposed to mercury, if you were exposed to pesticides, actually pesticides usually ends up in Parkinson's, but okay. If you don't sleep enough, if you are very obese and have diabetes, those are all reasons that you could get Alzheimer's. So coming back to the beginning of your question, healthy eating, what really helps not getting Alzheimer's, or at least delaying it by 10 years, is a very good cardiovascular system. If your blood is good, it cleans up the brain, it perfuses the brain, it takes out all the stuff that you don't want to have in there. If you sleep well, it does the same thing. Good sleep, good veins and arteries, which usually means exercise, and regulated sugar levels. Now, what does that mean? Just told you, diabetic people have a much higher incidence of Alzheimer's. They have unregulated sugar levels. But if the sugar levels are too low, you starve your brain. So it's not the Mediterranean diet. It's not the paleo diet. It's having a regular diet that is balanced and fresh. And not too much sugar, but sugar is fine. There's nothing wrong with carbohydrates. So I think that the way to be very specific about prolonging your life is good diet, good exercise, and good sleep. And it's not specific. It's not do weights, eat oil, don't eat oil, eat butter. It's not. It's just healthy, moderate.
Yeah, it's funny. That's kind of something my parents tried to drill into me. Everything is okay in moderation.
Yes, your parents were right.
And it's the same advice we've been hearing for years, eat healthy, exercise, get a good night's sleep, that kind of thing. So you talked about Alzheimer's. So let's move a little bit on to Parkinson's. Is that kind of similar where it could be genetic, it could be environmental? What's the deal with Parkinson's?
It's exactly the same, except we know that chemicals, if you are exposed to chemicals, bad chemicals, we are all exposed to chemicals, everything is chemistry. But if you're exposed to herbicides, pesticides, poisons, you have a tendency of going towards Parkinson's 20 years later. If you get hit over the head, you have a tendency of going towards chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which a lot of football players have. But you also have a tendency of getting towards Alzheimer's disease. Okay. So Parkinson's is definitely not the same disease as Alzheimer's, but I give you the similarities because we are working with the exact same drug in the both patient populations. So how can that be? Well, our drug speeds up how a nerve cell works. So just think, if you touch something hot, you retract your hand very fast. That's a reflex, okay? But if you touch something slowly, your hand has to tell your brain what you were touching, then you know what you were touching. Or if you want to move your hand, your brain has to tell your hand to move, okay? So if that movement is fast, if that transmission is fast, you move fast. If that transmission is slow, you don't move fast. In Parkinson's, you slur your speech, you shuffle your feet, you don't have control of your hands, that movement is impaired. Your nerve cells don't fire accurately. In Alzheimer's, you don't have that issue. In Alzheimer's, you think on this side and it doesn't go to this side. It goes slowly to the other side. So in Alzheimer's, the transmission is also impaired, but it's impaired in your brain. It's not impaired from your brain to the periphery. But in both cases, the transmission of neurosignals is impaired. And our drug improves that transmission. And that's why it works in both diseases.
So real quick, we only have a couple minutes left here, doctor. But so we all have elderly parents, hopefully. And so you're talking with one of your parents on the phone, and maybe in a 5-minute conversation, they tell you the same thing maybe 2 or 3 times. Is that cause for concern? Is that something your drug might might treat, that type of thing?
That's an excellent question. My mom died of Alzheimer's. And, she hid it from everybody other than me and maybe her husband, but he died before, but that died before she got really bad. I would say she hid it for 6 to 7 years because she was really, really good at not, she didn't repeat herself. She was really good at not mentioning all the stuff she forgot. She got really good at it. And then the question is, yes, what do you do? If they repeat themselves, they probably have Alzheimer's. If they just forget, in the beginning especially, it's hard to say if people are just elderly, because I know my brain is getting old, your brain, is getting old. Our brains are getting old, okay? And we can just get a little forgetful. That's normal. It's really normal. But if they start repeating themselves and forget everything or start doing bizarre things, then that's usually Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on the show today. It was great having you on. I learned a lot about what's happening in the pharmaceutical field. And the next program, the next Money Matters, we're going to have a guest next time. Michael Poisel from PCI Ventures is going to be joining us. But I hope everybody enjoyed the show today. And it was great having Dr. Maccecchini on to talk about the treatments that are ongoing today. And we'll see you again next time on another edition of Money Matters.